We're going to hear tonight from the candidates, Illapa Sairitupac, Lilah Mejia, Jacky Wong, Wei-Li Tjong, Mariama James, and Jasmin Sanchez.
Hi everyone, good evening. How's it going? My name is Illapa Sairitupac. I'm a proud community organizer on the Lower East Side. 4 years ago, I was pleased to get the opportunity to present for Grand Street Dems, and in that time since, I have remained active, organizing and helping constituents all over this district while liaising with many offices for our folks to get the help that they need. I'm a local tenant organizer, and I help renters build tenant associations, pressure landlords in delivering the repairs they need, and help activate folks into our housing movement. I'm also an organizer with the This Land Is Ours Community Land Trust, where we are trying to build community land trusts in Lower Manhattan. This has entailed workshops, rallies, teach-ins, petitioning, and many different ways to engage our folks here in Lower East Side into understanding that land use can indeed be decommodified. For years, I organized with the End Warehousing Coalition, and in 2023, we were so proud to have our bill passed by Governor Hochul. This was to address the Frankensteining of apartment units. So it combats the Frankensteining of units and also decentralizes the idea for landlords to do so. As a climate organizer, I organized with the Build Public Renewables Act, and in 2023, we passed our law which was created for $200 million, which was added to our budget last year to have renewable energy and to fight for more public renewables. In addition to my work as a tenant organizer, I currently work with a coalition to combat ICE, and I've been leading Know Your Rights trainings. I've been coordinating and growing local networks in Lower Manhattan and liaising with community leaders to combat this rise in fascism. In 2022, my campaign for this district raised $165,000 from small donations. This is before the matching funds system was put into place. My campaign had 1,200 volunteers. We knocked 60,000 doors, and we earned around over 3,300 votes. I am proud of what my campaign accomplished, and I come to you humbly to be reconsidered for this race. This time I bring into this race being a seasoned candidate who has recommitted himself to wanting to be a fighter in Albany for our folks in this neighborhood, in this district. Thank you so much.
First question, and it's a two-parter, so you need to repeat it as that. What committees in the assembly would you like to serve on and why? And then if elected, what bill would you prioritize introducing, and who in the current assembly do you see as potential collaborators or co-sponsors?
Totally. So I'm obviously very partial to housing. So that's the first committee I would want to be a part of. I'm really a big champion for the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, aka TOPA. This is, a real game changer. Marcella Mitainis is currently sponsoring it. I would work with her to make sure, it has a real chance. I go to Albany every year for this bill. We haven't passed it quite yet. It is instrumental for the building of community land trust. And basically, when a building is up for sale, TOPA allows tenants to have, an opportunity to have a say in the purchase of that building, whoever buys it next. And it kind of interrupts the system of landlord buying landlord and landlord, handing over to a new landlord. And it gives folks a power to really stop that and see if we can have, real low income housing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who would you work with on that?
In the assembly.
In the assembly. I think
I said, okay.
Yeah, Marcella Mitainis, yeah.
Okay. Next question is, what are the levers you can use in the assembly to expedite getting an accessible elevator at the Delancey Essex Street station?
Ooh, that's a really good one. So obviously we need more disability rights. We need more mechanisms and power to address our folks who can't get around so easily. I would definitely be interested in collaborating with local groups and maybe doing some surveys and pressing on folks who trying to get me in the governor, obviously trying to organize on grassroots level to address these shortcomings. And disability justice, on transit is a huge issue. We need to fully fund the MTA for accessibility for improvements on subways, on buses, and this obviously, to your point, includes elevators. And we got to figure out ways to reopen entrances that are currently closed and expanding bus services and boarding platforms.
Okay, and how would we fund that? Thanks. How would that be funded?
I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Oh.
how would that be funded?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in the Invest in Our New York coalition and the Invest in Our New York bills. It's time we tax the rich and find ways. We have a huge budget every year in our state. It's time to really start reallocating these funds, and I would definitely that's one of the options for sure, to champion taxing the rich and to really creating a different language and dialogue for how these common sense issues can be addressed fully.
Okay, that was a good segue, because my next question is, saying tax the rich is a catchphrase, but not actual legislation. So what are two specific methods of raising revenue for New York State which you introduce or Albany?
Absolutely. So we have to raise corporate taxes on the most profitable corporations. Brad Hoylman has a bill on this. I think it's S953. It's a bill that would do so, and we need to make state income taxes more progressive. This is Robert Jackson, I believe, in the state Senate, and Meeks in the Assembly. This is like a millionaire's tax on income, and we got to pass the Fair Share Act, which is I think it's FARA. That's Fair to Front in the Assembly. And this would allow New York to implement a millionaire's tax to fund social housing in the way that Seattle has a social housing tax. So I think it's like a 2% tax on millionaires.
Can we just,
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
okay.
I think head off your house. We head off your house.
Try to get up.
Okay, well, I think that's on our end.
Can we hold for like one?
Yeah.
The clock
Yeah,
is
no,
up.
we're-
I just
Or
hold.
All good.
something.
Okay. Do you wanna try to get up?
Yep. I'm on that one.
Um,
I think it's on the other one, so I think it might be okay. Hey, Alpha, can you hear us okay now?
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm sorry.
Right, so we can resume?
Okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna resume the clock and you finish your thought. I don't think you can remember where you were at. Oh, thank you, that's true, yeah. All right, well, let's go to the next question. Okay. Brand Street Co-op, pardon the question again. Yeah. Brand Street Co-ops will struggle to afford the cost of decarbonization mandated by local law 97. Is there state level financial support or legislation you would support to ensure these buildings can go green without bankrupting residents?
Absolutely. So we got to adapt and we have to meet the moment. And as you know, we are far behind as a country with our climate change oriented laws. We are still using dirty, fossil fuel grids for energy. We are still dependent on these, frack gas pipeline, which are really an aberration in our city that we're building these. I think solar is a very interesting possibility, using solar energy. And you're saying the bills are increasing in Grand Street? Is that what you're saying? Like the energy bills? Because I think I'm really of the opinion that energy, just like water and housing, is a human right. Energy should be a human right as well, and we have to decommodify that. The fact that our bills are increasing every cycle with Con Edison is not okay, and we have to really democratize our energy grid. And I was obviously a huge proponent of this with the Build Public Renewables Act and being in the climate justice world for a while. And I think these systems all affect each other. Thank you.
Okay, this is gonna be the last question I want to take from the audience if there's time. Being a member of the assembly means representing constituents that have very different opinions with which you may not agree. How do you see yourself effectively advocating advocating for the interests of folks with whom you strongly disagree.
Totally. This is a very diverse district, politically, culturally, ethnically, socioeconomically, and I know that. And I, in my time organizing, I have organized, folks who are, fighting the bad landlord, and we're having conversations, and suddenly they go, and I love Trump, right? So like we have to take that from where they are. We have to realize that folks are not the summation of their political ideations, even if we disagree on that, and we have to see each other as humans first, obviously. And even though we might have different inclinations, at the end of the day, we're just trying to survive out here. And I want to be, as a former social worker who had many, clients of all different kinds of thought systems, I had to, see them as a human first and realize that just be a good listener. And we're not here to always argue. We're here to listen to each other and try to make inroads. As democratic socialists, that really, informs my values. And yeah, we got to figure out ways to clarify how we can work together because we are not each other's enemy, like the fascist system and this, where we are just being stripped of our rights, that is the real enemy. So I think I would like to remind folks, just as we all know deeply on the inside.
So we have time for a few questions. One question?
Yeah, maybe two if it goes quickly, but
Anyone have a
one.
question? Who you putting?
Yes. What do you feel about using tax money to fund? What do you feel about how to fund the MTA with all the new proposals that have come out of the mayor's office? Because it's a state agency.
Yeah, that's a city agency. Is that what you're saying? It's more of a city. I'm not sure if I will have, yeah, it's my opinion on this, because obviously as ideally as a hopeful state legislator, I wouldn't have so much control over city policy, but I definitely have, I would observe what, Zoran's doing. Are you saying like the funding for, can you rephrase that one more time?
The MTA is a state agency with funding provided for by the state. How would you, one is, do you support the mayor's new free buses plan? And two, if so, how would you fund it?
Got it. Yeah. I think right now it's financed with a lot of private debt, and we need like a public infrastructure bank. I think we need more public banks as well. I think that we do have the funding ultimately to make this a reality. Obviously, I knocked many doors for Zoran, fighting for free buses. So that's kind of where I am on that.
You have time for another question?
We can do one very quick question, like 15-second question, and like a 1-minute response.
Are you for, against, or neutral on open primaries?
Open primary.
Yes. For, against, or neutral, or in other words.
That's when voters not. Yeah, I mean, I guess the idea is a person can vote for candidates who are in different affiliations. Is that what this is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sounds good to me. It increases participation in voting. So I think obviously we know that not enough people vote in this country.
Thank you.
All right, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. See you around. I'll be around.
Hey, how's everyone doing tonight? I hope you guys are all surviving the blizzard. My name is Lilah Mejia. Oh, do I need the mic? I can project and everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, all right. My name is Lilah Mejia, born and raised in the neighborhood. I still live here. I live in Massachusetts Towers while I'm raising my 6 children. I grew up on 12th Street and Avenue D. I'm an education advocate, housing advocate, and climate justice advocate. I've worked in this neighborhood my whole life, mainly through our settlement houses. Currently, I work at Nidus for the Elements House. It is a clubhouse for people who suffer from SMI at 48 Henry Street. I am running because I feel that this community deserves someone who is involved in community, someone who is passionate about community, someone who cares and is for the people.
15 seconds.
I'm done.
Great.
Okay, get to the point.
Cool. Melissa.
Yeah, sorry. What committees in the assembly would you like to serve on and why? If elected, it's a two-part. If elected, what bill would you prioritize introducing and who in the current assembly do you see as potential co-sponsors or collaborators?
So because I was a former CEC1 president, I'm also a mother of 6 kids. My kids went to charter, public school, and Catholic school. My priority would be the education committee, if I can chair that, or not the housing, but most likely the education committee. What is the second part?
Second part is, if elected, what bill would you prioritize introducing and who in the current assembly do you see as potential collaborators or co-sponsors?
So because District 1, a lot of our kids are leaving the schools, but one of the issues that we have is that our children are not reading on state level. And it's not just the Lower East Side, it's across the city. I would focus on legislation where we're supporting our students. Also, 1 in 4 kids do have dyslexia and kids are not diagnosed until the 3rd grade. I would change that to make sure that all children and teachers know how to diagnose a person if they're dyslexic. I'm sorry, I just had
Okay, and then who in the current assembly would you wish to have?
I was gonna say Harvey, but he's not there. I don't know, actually. I don't know. Apologies. I don't know who I would work with.
Okay. Next question is, okay, saying tax the rich is a catchphrase and not actual legislation. What are 2 specific methods of raising revenue for New York State which you introduced in Albany?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Sure. Saying tax the rich is a catchphrase but not actual legislation. What are 2 specific methods of raising revenue for New York State which you introduced in Albany?
So I do believe that you could tax the rich. As assembly person, I cannot make a law, but I can legislate to change tax codes to make sure that the rich are taxed. And that would be one of the priorities that I would work on. I don't have a second priority.
Okay. Grand Street co-ops will struggle to afford the costs of decarbonization mandated by local law 97. Is there state level financial support or legislation you would support to ensure these buildings can go green without bankrupting residents?
I think that Grand Street, along other developments, I think in the same situation. I think there needs to be more advocacy for making sure that our buildings go greener and cleaner using solar power. I think that this community has not tapped into it. Maybe some of our schools have, but I don't think any of our developments, which is rent stabilized, HDFCs, have actually become greener. So I think that's a whole conversation for the bigger community, not just Grand Street, but I would support anything that is for being greener. For those that don't know, I worked at Little Lower East Side, LES Ready, in which I helped to bring in 350 million to this community. So climate resiliency, being resiliency is always my priority. It's been my work. I just graduated with my master's in emergency management. So you will know that I can handle an emergency if something was to happen.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Being a member of the assembly means representing constituents that have very different opinions with which you may not agree. How do you see yourself effectively advocating for the interests of folks with whom you strongly disagree throughout the whole assembly?
That's a really great question. Our assembly district is very diverse. There's not just one group of people. I think it's important that when you're hiring, your staff reflects what the community looks like. It reflects the culture. And I think it's really important to hire within because they know the issues firsthand. There's going to be a lot of times where I might not agree, I might not understand, but I'm very big on listening and trying to come to a middle ground so that it supports the efforts of maybe something that I necessarily will not agree with, to try to have a middle platform for that.
Okay, and after this question, we'll take from the audience. If you were explaining the New York Health Act to a constituent, what is the single strongest case you would make in its favor? And what is the most difficult obstacle or trade-off it presents?
So the New York Health Act, to explain it, I would say that it would give us all health care, everyone. It's not that, oh, I have a job and I have my insurance through my employer. Everyone has access to health care. which I think that's kind like, it's pretty much self-explanatory. I don't know, it's not self-explanatory, but I think it's just basically giving out more education to people so they understand that it's just that we all, regardless if you work, regardless if you're an immigrant, you are covered.
Okay, and what is the most difficult obstacle or trade-off it presents?
I think the difficult trade-off is that I don't think that we're currently ready to have free healthcare for everyone. Whether you're a New Yorker, whether you have worked your whole life, I think that's a bigger question that needs to be had.
Okay, so we have time for some questions.
2, maybe 3, depending on how quickly
Should we
we
do
go.
3? Anyone questions? No, oh,
Over 30 seconds for the question askers, please.
I have a question. Being born and raised community, you know, the community is divided, particularly in our Black and brown communities. How you as a state assembly member fit in those shoes like Harvey did, where he was able to move around the whole community and work with everyone? How would you approach the division in our community and work with everyone, no matter what the situation is?
I think coalition building is effective. I think that when you get all groups of people, also the young, people who have disability issues, elders and different, community groups like PTAs, tenant associations, I think it's important that you build together and you put them in spaces so that you kind of bring in that unity. I think that as assemblywoman, when I am your assemblywoman, I would open my doors more to have different people come in and making sure that we are talking about these issues, having town halls, and not even just town halls, going to actually the community itself, whether it's a block party, what is an event at a basketball court. It's making sure that you are there, instead of expecting people to come to you, you go to them.
anyone else? Yeah. Wendy.
Hi, I got to know you through LES Ready, and you were leading that effort. And right now, are we ready as a community? And what can you do as a state assembly member right now to help us be more ready when another disruption comes?
Honestly, I don't think we're ready. I think we're somewhat ready. I think it's important that all tenant leaders are prepared and there's a pot of money for funding to make sure that you will have a system to let sure that your tenants know in case of an emergency. Not everyone has a cell phone, right? So what do you do when families just have a regular landline? I think that we have to coordinate those efforts, work more with our CBOs and even with our elected officials and our faith-based churches. I feel like we're still kind of separate in our efforts and we're not coordinated. I think it's also being a part of LES Ready and still having these conversations. Just because the 100-year storm happened in 2012, we just had a blizzard, we just had COVID. And we see the different platforms of how people have showed up. Some efforts were saturated in one place and some weren't. So I think it's just making sure that it is coordinated with all leaders, whether they're a community leader, whether they're a district leader, whether they're a city council, or whether there's somebody who wants to be involved.
We have time for 1 or maybe 2 questions.
Anyone else have a question? Two.
Question.
2 questions. I've asked if anyone else has a question.
No, that's a good question.
Okay, go ahead.
So, do you think we need more judges? Because do you support increasing the judiciary? Because right now, there's a limited number of judges that can be elected in Manhattan Supreme and in civil court.
I do not know enough to give you a proper answer, and I do not want to talk out of my capacity. So I can follow up with you and then let you know what I feel about it. If you don't mind, I'll give you my cell phone. I'll give everyone my cell phone. I love coffee. You know, we go for a coffee, go for a drink. I'm literally in the neighborhood. I love to dance too, whatever you want to do. We're here. But good catch question. I'll keep that in mind.
Anyone else have another question? Is Jackie on the Zoom?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay,
Yes.
thank you very much.
Really quick, thank you guys so much for allowing me to be here. Thank you. I look forward to working with each and every one of you. I'm serious when I say that if you do want to talk to me, I'm really easily accessible. My number is 646-266-8418. That is my personal number. I live in Masaryk, 8719D, just say, I'm easily contacted. I really would love the opportunity to be your future assemblywoman, which I know that I am. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Jacky Wong. I'm the district leader for Assembly District 65 Part B, and I'm running for the Assembly District 65 this year. I see some familiar faces, but for those who may not know me, I'm an immigrant from Hong Kong. I moved to the country when I was 26 years old. I live in Southbridge Towers near the seaport area, and before that, I live in the Grand Street Lower East Side area for more than 15 years. So I'm fairly familiar with Grand Street corridor, and I work in Chinatown. Professionally, I was a journalist for over a decade, so I can be naturally nosy. But I also believe that elected officers should be asking the right questions on behalf of the public. Following that, I became the director to manage a senior building next to, I'm sorry?
10 seconds.
10 seconds for your opening.
To the Manhattan Detention Center. So I'm always like for more and more affordable housing. I also serve on community board for a couple of years where I chair the land use committee. So some developments in the Grand Street and some land use decision in the Lower East Side have my involvements. Okay, I'll open for questions.
Yeah, awesome question.
Thank you, Jackie.
All right.
Okay, what committees in the assembly would you like to serve on and why? If elected, what bill would you prioritize introducing, and who in the current assembly do you see yourself collaborating with?
So I mean, right now, I see there's an urgency within the 8065. We are a immigrant district. We have a very large immigrant populations. I see the fear within the immigrants community about this ICE enforcement. And right now, the law is that when you are at home, ICE agency come to your home without knock at your door without a judicial warrant. You do not have to open the door for them. However, that does not apply to the workplace, which means that the ICE agents can come in and grab someone, and people need to work. So when I become the assembly member, what I want to propose is that I want to make sure that the judicial warrants is expanded to cover the workplace. So the business owner do not need to let ICE agents into their private area of their business if the ICE agents cannot present a judicial warrant. So that's something I really wanted to do.
Okay, and who in the current assembly do you see yourself working with on that?
I see, like, for this particular idea, it should be well supported by most of the assembly members in the chamber, because this is something really represent the value of New York State. So I don't see other assembly people not supporting that.
Okay. In your questionnaire, you said that you did not have enough information to say whether or not you support ending qualified immunity. In the past week, have you looked into that bill, and has your answer changed?
I had looked into that bill, although I did not spend a lot of time on it. But based on my previous study, I see like different opinions, and I do not have a very solid opinions on this topic.
Okay. Do you have a soft opinion? Sorry, I'm sorry. Okay.
You don't have a solid position on that.
Okay. Saying tax the rich is a catchphrase, but not actual legislation. What are two specific methods of raising revenue for New York State would you introduce in Albany?
You say the question again? I'm sorry, because I'm on Zoom, so I cannot hear you very clearly.
Okay, sorry. So tax the rich is a catchphrase, but not legislation. What are two specific ways of raising revenue would you introduce in Albany?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for asking that question. I was a community board 3 member for a couple of years, as I mentioned earlier. Every time when there was a state elected officers who came to our community board, I won't say every time, but there were a couple of times I asked them whether they can they can enact the peer-to-peer test, because we have a lot of foreign investors or out of state investors simply invest their money in our condos in New York City or New York State. These apartments are not being used. It's not even about like whether about they basically park the money in our city, expect the property value to increase and get a profit. Nothing is these units are not being used at all. So I think we should tax those people to raise the revenue. That has been in my mind for a long time, even before I decided to join this race.
Grand Street co-ops will struggle to afford the costs of decarbonization mandated by local law 97. Is there state level financial support or legislation that you would support to ensure the buildings can go green without bankrupting residents?
That is very important. I live in a co-op. I understand your concern. I mean, the intention for local law 97 is very important, is correct. I mean, I went to college for biology, so I'm naturally for all the climate protection legislations. However, we do not want to penalize the people. We want to encourage them to able to meet those targets. So what I would, when I become the assembly person, what I would do in the state is that we need to create programs that can support a co-op board and co-op owners so that they can comply with the local law 97, able to meet those targets. And if they are not, I mean, we don't want to just like charge them for the penalty, right? Because that is really like, what's the purpose of it? We want them to be able to catch up with the deadline requirements and everything. So I think some specific program need to be created to support like financial assistance or other technical assistance program should be created to support the co-op owners.
All right, being a member of the assembly means representing constituents that have very different opinions with which you might not agree. How do you see yourself effectively advocating for the interests of folks with whom you strongly disagree?
Yes, so I mean, the Lower Manhattan or each neighborhood in Lower Manhattan, we constantly have those situations, not just in the assembly or the community board or neighborhood organizations. I see that wherever I go, we always see those situations. But at the end of the day, people would always understand that we are on the same boat, like we are one neighborhood, one community, and we have to compromise. Like for example, housing. There are people want to build 100% affordable housing. I want to do that too, but then there's also reality that wouldn't allow us to do that. So there's compromise, like for example, SS Crossing, 50%. That has been a compromise to everybody. So eventually, there should be a mechanism where however, there should be a mechanism where all the voices can be fully reflected and then come to discussion, negotiation, and a conclusion. And we always do that.
Okay, thanks. Karen, how are you answering?
We have time for 2 or 3 questions, so.
We're gonna have the audience ask questions.
You have a question for Jacky? Ron?
Hey, Jacky, it's Ron. As a former distributor, I'm just curious to know, you haven't completed a quarter of your term as distributor yet, but yet you're willing to jump over to the assembly. What about the promises that you made willing to the assembly district to get from the position now? And have you gone on board in the position or lost interest? What is it that's making you want to leave and jump ship from a position that you people voted for you to come into and believe that you would sort of complete before taking another seat in the Assembly.
I'm sorry again, Ron, because I'm on Zoom. Are you able to?
Ron's gonna ask
And
you,
the question is pretty lengthy. I don't want to misunderstood.
Yeah.
Sorry. Quick question, Jackie. As a former district leader, you sworn or took an oath to people that voted for you that you would complete, I guess, the duties of district leader, but you haven't completed yet a quarter of your term, but now that you're jumping to another seat. So is this sort of like a political sort of building a resume type thing, or are you dedicated to be a district leader? What happens to the seat now if you leave and become assembly? What about the promises that you made to the people that voted for you to be in district leader?
So, thank you, Ron. I think your question is about whether I will stay on as a district leader and how to my responsibility to the voters. So I think if I'm elected as an assembly person, it's a natural thing to do to resign from the district leader's position, or at least like I won't want to carry the both position at the same time. I want somebody else to be the district leader. And I think this is something very common in our political system. When someone is interested in newer positions, then they would automatically give up to the other, open up that position for other, or give the opportunities for other people who are also interested in the system. I hope I answered your question, because the question was a little bit lengthy.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Anyone else have any? We have time for one.
We have time for one more question.
One more question, if there's one. Bill.
Right.
I don't know if you can hear. Can you hear me, Jackie?
I can hear you.
Okay, so Mariama James wants to have expand the free bus system, and it's up to the assembly to pass that. What's your position on that?
I don't have the detail of it, but there's one thing about transportation we got to understand. The east side is the transportation desert. Like the part that I represent, the part B, especially the part B of 8065, is a transportation desert. After they enact the congestion pricing, my understanding is that MTA need to put more, but at least more buses in our area. And that didn't happen. And I'm very upset about that. I don't know about the Mandani's free buses yet. But even before that, we need to make sure the whole MTA accountable. They need to invest in our community. It's so overdue. Not even before the implementation of congestion pricing, the east side is a transportation desert. Every time when I go to meet my constituents, it just takes me so much effort, so much walking, and we have a lot of seniors in that area. We really need to change that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
I'm sorry?
You get a 1 minute closing statement.
Oh, okay. So for the closing, I want to thank you, Grand Street Democrat, for meeting me today. I just want to say that as an immigrant, as an Asian, and as a member of the LGBTQ community, I feel like the people of this district has been treating me extremely kind and has given me a lot. So, and volunteering and public services has always been part of my adult life. So now I'm seeking a larger platform to represent our people so that we can bring better policies to our area and benefit everybody. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Wei-Li Tjong. I grew up here, son of immigrants, in this community that shaped everything that I became. Trying opportunities to open my parents' struggle and my own meant I was lucky enough to have the kind of education that is traditionally reserved for the wealthy. I practiced law for 25 years and I founded a successful 16-lawyer firm 15 years ago. I've been a city administrative law judge. I've drafted contracts, interpreted statutes, and guided clients through the full weight of city, state, and federal law. I know how legislation is written, and I know where it succeeds and where it fails those that it was meant to protect. I'm the only practicing attorney in this race. I'm also the only candidate that has directly governed a large and diverse community of thousands for 25 years. Those are facts, and those speak to what I can bring to Albany on day one. I'm running because I've always had a deep desire to serve my community, a feeling of greater purpose, and this rare and frankly insane opportunity to give voice to it in such a powerful way is far too valuable to pass.
Time.
I humbly ask for your support.
Let's few questions then.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Okay. What committees in the assembly would you like to serve on and why? And if elected, what bill would you prioritize introducing? And who in the current assembly do you see yourself collaborating with?
Okay, several questions. In terms of who I would collaborate with, I think very clearly I would collaborate with hopefully our new Senator Grace Lee, as well as Christopher Marte. I already collaborate with them on a regular basis, and they would certainly be part of a formidable trio, I think, if I were to be elected. In terms of what committees I would want to be a part of, I don't think that's going to be directly up to me. As a freshman assemblyman, you really have not your pick of anything. It's what they will allow you to do. If I had my pick, I would certainly be on housing. I would certainly also be on healthcare. I would certainly want to join the varied, like the AAPI caucus and the Latino caucus. But I think those communities to me are less important than forming broad relationships. I think as a freshman assemblyman, you're already challenged to be effective, and in order to be effective, you need to form those early relationships with people who can not only teach you things, but can give you access to things.
Next question. Saying tax the rich is a catchphrase. Excuse me, but not actual legislation. What are two specific methods of raising revenue for New York State which you introduce in Albany?
Yeah, no, you're right. Tax the rich is sometimes a thing that people can use against Democrats. I think that is something that often Republicans mobilize in order to create the sense that if we do truly address our tax infrastructure and create enforceable progressive taxation, that somehow that is going to force everybody out of the city, out of the state. I don't believe that that's true. I do believe, however, that you have to balance interests, because there is a point at which if you tax businesses or individuals too much, they will relocate. This has been happening to Texas and Florida. We've lost a lot of population and tax revenue to those states because they have no state tax. And that's not something that New York can sustain, but we can make it fairer and yet sustainable to raise more revenue.
Given the time commitments required as an assembly member, will you step down from your role on the Seward Park Board, and will you continue to practice law in addition to serving in the legislature?
Okay, as far as the Seward Park Board is concerned, absolutely. I don't think you can do this job and be on the Seward Park Board. So certainly if elected, that is something that I will have to step down from. Certainly this June, I will also step down as president, so I will no longer be in that uncomfortable position, frankly, of late. Then will I continue to work? Legislative law section 5B prohibits me from working outside of my assembly position reasonably well. It's not perfectly well settled law. Currently, the courts are construing it, but suffice it to say that my full-time job would be the assembly, and any other income would essentially be passive.
Okay. Being a member of the assembly means representing constituents that have very different opinions which with you may not agree. How do you see yourself effectively advocating for the interests of folks with whom you strongly disagree with?
I think it's always hard to put yourself in that position, but unfortunately or fortunately, I have been in that position many, many times. Even now. I think when you disagree with people and you're in a position such as assembly, you have to take that on board. There's no way not to. I mean, you're there to represent your constituency, not yourself. This is a fundamental concept in fiduciary responsibility, which I've undertaken again and again and again in my life for the last 25 years, both as an attorney for my clients, where I must put their interests above my own, even to my own detriment. This is how I treat my clients. This is how I treat the co-op, which I'm also a fiduciary of. In the same way, even though it's not strictly a quote unquote fiduciary relationship, I would serve with the same level of honesty, loyalty in the public trust. I strongly believe that we need people who are honest, transparent, and are there because they want to do something good and not for venal reasons or power-seeking reasons.
Grand Street co-ops will struggle to afford the cost of decarbonization mandated by local law 97. Is there state level financial support or legislation you would support to ensure these buildings can go green without bankrupting residents?
Well, that's a hot button question, certainly for this co-op and for all the co-ops in Part A. It's something I'm all too familiar with, having been deeply involved for the last 25 years in our operations and budget here at the Seward Park Co-op. I know, having looked into it, that complying fully with electrification and the requirements that must be in place by 2050, not to say even 2030, that it would cost somewhere between $50 and $100 million to rewire this entire site. And I suspect similar costs for similar co-ops. That's simply not sustainable for a population here that still is a Newark, that contains a lot of people on fixed incomes. And it's true also of all the Mitchell-Lama co-ops. Mitchell-Lama co-ops should continue to be protected from this. It's going to be very, very, very hard to achieve the climate goals that have been ambitiously set. Those are the right goals, but we have to be realistic. We can't think pie in the sky. Already we have failed, the state has failed to create enough wind power as it said it would. Solar is just barely where it should be. And we're still making power, over half of it, with fossil fuels. We can't allow our grid to be unstable, especially as new industries like AI come online that suck a bunch of power, Bitcoin mining, all of this new technology does create instability, and we cannot sacrifice the stability of our power grid.
15 seconds.
Which is very important, especially if we electrify. But I think to protect the co-ops in particular from this kind of expense, we really need to take a hard look at what are laws that can gradually come into place in order to eventually get us.
Can I do one more? Or should I? Okay. Do you support the New York for All Act and the Access to Representation Act? Why or why not? And if you do support these measures, what concrete steps would you take to move them out of committee and onto the floor?
So it's the Health Act and
The New York for All.
New York for All Act.
And Access to Representation.
Access to, oh yes, okay. Well, the latter is very easy for me to respond to. I think that right to counsel is absolutely critical. It's part of the reason I became a lawyer. It's also something that, our system depends on. And due process cannot be achieved if you don't have counsel. I mean, these people that are caught up in this immigration system are the most vulnerable people. And unless they have someone to help them navigate them and to stand up for the rights that they do have, all hope is lost. And I think New York City has the Public Defender's Office, even the IRS has the Taxpayer Advocate Service. And that is something that we just need to map onto our immigration customs. And as far as the New York for All Act, I'm definitely for it in principle. I think that unfortunately, because of the way it's drafted, it's going to fail. And what we really need to do is start working on the individual aspects of the bill. For instance, I think one thing to immediately push forward would be legislation that specifically targets getting rid of the 287G agreements that our local police in the state have, whether it's on Long Island or upstate, with the federal government. I think that that is absolutely something that can get passed just by itself.
Do Does anyone in the audience have questions?
Rod and Aaron.
All right,
Go in there.
30 seconds to ask your questions, please.
There's a lot of discussion of landlord-tenant rights between residential and residential tenants. I'm thinking about landlord versus small businesses and also the city. A lot of small business getting squeezed, forced out. Vape shops open up, marijuana shops, versus the quality of life. And heard of small businesses. What can we do to protect them from landlord predation, but also city regulation and taxes?
Right. I think small businesses and family businesses in particular, and immigrant businesses that, you know, make up a lot of the businesses that we have in this district are the lifeblood. I started a small business. I still run a small business. I think it's the best way to work. And, you know, it is part, I think, of the fabric of the American dream, to have your own business, to stand for yourself and to make your own money. That said, yes, rents, commercial rents are as out of control as residential rents are. And we don't talk about that too often because we think about store owners as part of the property owning class. And yeah, they are, but they may be struggling just as hard as somebody that has a regular salaried job with somebody else. In fact, they may be struggling more because they have to shoulder a lot of burdens, regulatory and otherwise. For instance, one of the questions on this incredibly comprehensive questionnaire that you guys sent out, and it really took me several days to do because I'm doing a lot of other things. Plus, each of these questions is like an essay in and of itself. Okay, but when you think about, like, for instance, creating a private right of action for workers, okay, under the law, this is in principle a good thing, and is something that is being proposed. However, it really does not take a strong look at small business. I have a lot of experience with local businesses being sued under the premise of ADA. And the ADA is meant to be a good law. And it is, in large part, a good law because it really holds people to the standard that they should be held as far as accessibility is concerned. However, because there is a private right of action under the law, there are a lot of business owners that have to just essentially pay through the nose, you know, $20,000, $30,000 just because somebody decided to drop a suit on them, and there's nothing wrong. So I think that kind of extortion and those kinds of pressures should be mitigated. Yeah.
Very good question.
So speaking about that, all the lawsuits in civil court and in Supreme Court, there aren't enough judges. And the judges are always complaining about that and saying, well, we need legislation to have the ability to increase the budget and have more judges. Because, you know, there are cases that are there for years.
Absolutely.
You know, sitting, you know, on the docket and they can't be addressed.
That's right. No, there's a lot of reasons for that. New York, you know, for better or for worse, has a great body of law. It's weird in some ways and it's different, but a lot of jurisdictions, a lot of business, both around the world and around the country, is governed by New York law and in New York courts. So you have this massive influx of litigation into New York courts, which they have to deal with because you're allowed to choose by contract your law and your venue. So this puts a lot of pressure, especially on the commercial division, to deal with stuff, and it causes a huge backlog. So I think you're absolutely right. There needs to be more allocation of budget to the judiciary to enable them to hire more people so that we can just process faster, frankly. And on another note, maybe there are ways that we can selectively and carefully apply AI tools to help us process these things better.
We're out of time, but you get 1 minute to close.
Okay, 1 minute to close. I was planning on a 2-minute introductory speech, so I had to shorten that a little bit. Yeah. Look, I grew up in this co-op, right? My father came to this country in 1971 with nothing, right? It's trite, but it's true. He found work as a translator, translating Spanish and Chinese into English for social services organizations. And at night, he worked at restaurants. In fact, at Wohop at one point. And, you know, he struggled. And my mom came here a year later, and she and I did not speak English. We spoke Portuguese, and so we learned English together. And that's my story, but it's also everybody's story in this district. You know, that's the American dream and the immigrant experience here. I'm doing this because, well, it's hard, right? And I don't expect to. All right, look, guys, I'm doing this because I think I'd be really good at it, and I'm a quick learner. It's going to be hard. I want to form the relationships, do it right. So please give me your endorsement. I appreciate it so much.
Everyone, everyone ready? We're good?
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time tonight. I am Mariama James. And I feel like since there's so many candidates that are going to be telling you or have told you already this evening what they will do if given an opportunity, that I would just instead tell you what I've done already, what I've created my own opportunities to do. So, I started doing advocacy and protesting. My first one alone without my parents was when Happy raised the tuition on Cooney and SUNY. And I've been at it ever since. So after 9/11, my community was in need of a high school. We had really overcrowded classrooms. And I was one of the people that helped to raise the money to create Millennium High School. I also
15 seconds.
had a nonprofit, Southbridge Parent and Youth, where I would have all kinds of things for the kids, local in Southbridge and in Smith projects, just under the bridge from us on Pearl Street. And then I one day asked the city to close Pearl Street permanently and had a park built in the corner of Fulton between Water and Pearl.
Nicole's gonna ask questions and then we'll take questions from the audience.
What committees in the assembly would you like to serve on and why? And if elected, what bill would you prioritize introducing? And you're not sure, who in the current assembly do you see as a potential collaborator or co-sponsor? So,
Yeah. So I would probably seek to be on the housing committee and youth and education. That's been where I put the greatest amount of energy and in the time that I've been doing advocacy, which is like over 2 decades. PTA president, SLT member of several lower Manhattan schools, helped to hire the new principal at Loma, down at the Seward Park campus. My daughter's senior year, we lost the principal. And I'm a part of a nonprofit now too. We provide after school programming and a week of summer care, boys summer care to underprivileged middle school kids in the area and beyond. We have some schools in the Bronx as well, and now in Staten Island, but several in Lower Manhattan. So that explains my desire to be involved in education and youth. And as far as housing, I have already helped to acquire, I created a coalition that sought to build affordable housing at 5 World Trade Center. And we were successful in getting 400 deeply affordable units, as well as a 20% preference throughout the building, all 1,200 units for 9/11 survivors and first responders. So anybody, from this area, from all over the World Trade Center health impacted zone, would be eligible for that housing when it's built. Oh, and who I would collaborate with? I already collaborate a lot with Charles Fall, who is the deputy speaker. We just had an African burial ground event last Saturday. We do it annually for the past 3 years, Black History Month.
And it's time for the question.
Okay.
You have another question?
so saying tax the rich is a catchphrase, but not actual legislation. What are 2 specific methods of raising revenue for New York State that you would introduce in Albany?
So I've been actually doing more research on this because I had kind of settled on supporting through the assembly something that we could pass that would support like Congressman Goldman's Robin Hood Act, because and on surface that seemed to be a really good mechanism to get people like him to pay up. It was actually pointed out to me that some other states had experimented with other ways. And so I've been spending a lot of time reading and haven't exactly settled on one way or another yet, but definitely tax the rich, you know.
Did you find anything interesting that intrigued you?
So there was one, where any assets or, bonds or stocks or whatever, over $250,000 that were sold would be taken, and I thought that that was too low. Because I mean, I live in a co-op, I know many of you may be shareholders in co-op, so let's say you sell your apartment, obviously that's gonna be more than $250,000 in Lower Manhattan, that doesn't mean you're rich, right? So I feel like it needs to be delved into a little bit more before we just say that that's a good amount.
Next question. Grand Street co-ops will struggle to afford the cost of decarbonization mandated by local law 97. Is there state level financial support or legislation you would support to ensure these buildings can go green without bankrupting residents?
I absolutely would, because I experienced it already firsthand, when I had a major leak in my apartment in Pikehurst. And living in the co-op obviously is responsible for what happens in the wall, and I'm responsible for what happens in the apartment. But one of the things that had to happen in order to fix the wall was that I had to take my oven out, right? So just to have it, my own, just to turn the valve, I had to hire a plumber to the tune of $600 to turn the valve back so I could put my oven back in. And the insurance, homeowners insurance didn't cover that part. So I know that there's some problems with that bill, and it was well intended, but there's some problems. So we definitely need to support people in that transition. And I would certainly do that.
Okay. So being a member of the assembly means representing constituents that have very different opinions with which you may not agree. How do you see yourself effectively advocating for the interests of folks with whom you strongly disagree?
So I've done that already as well. Again, in being one of the handful of people to fight for and then help to create and then pass and then expand the legislation that provides 9/11 healthcare and compensation to 140,000 people. I've had to work with Republicans. I've had to work with mostly males. I've had to work with Republican males. Including like Mike Lawler, and we certainly don't agree on much, but I was able to work with him. I have that ability to reach across the aisle, as they said, to get stuff done.
There's time for, you can ask another, yeah, and then we can go to the.
Thank you. So if you were explaining the New York Health Act to a constituent, what is the single strongest case you would make in its favor? And what is the most difficult obstacle or trade-off it presents?
So the strongest thing I would present is that the assembly people are also going to have the same insurance. So we're not trying to sell you some crap that we wouldn't use ourselves or have to use. One potential flaw that I'm trying to work out actually, I'm trying to get my community board to pass a resolution in support of it, was 9/11 health. So the federal program has really very highly specified expertise doctors that are there just to treat 9/11 healthcare. So they've been through some sort of extra training to know what to look for in a survivor or responder. And there is some concerns among those who have been impacted that these doctors won't be paid quickly enough, or maybe they won't be paid well enough where they'll want to continue, and they may start to provide like concierge care, and we lose like the best doctors that we could possibly have. So that's one piece.
Thank you.
Okay, time for one or two questions?
Yep.
Anyone have a question for Mariama? Bill?
Mayor Mamdani would like to expand the free bus system, and the assembly would be very important in helping that along. So what's your position about it?
I'm in support.
I guess the issue then, where would the money, where's the money come from?
Well, I mean, we were supposed to be rolling in the dough from congestion, I say, yet the fares have been increased to $3. So that would be like, honestly, my first concern to find out where that money could come from. I would certainly help to look for it so that we can implement the free busing, but I do want to know where the money is being spent from the congestion pricing.
Good question.
Okay, we have time for more questions. Yeah.
Anyone have a question?
Behind you. Yeah.
Given your experience with education in the past, what do you think is the biggest issue facing this community right now for education or what is that?
Lack of arts and culture. I think because, well, first of all, this community was literally like built by artists, right? Largely Lower Manhattan. In the schools, because we've gotten so far behind, unfortunately, in other states that are surprising to me sometimes when we look to see, where the highest reading or math levels are. Then sadly not in New York. So we have to focus on these if we want children to be able to move further and go to higher education. So art, science, those things are normally what's mixed. We moved one time, in one of the schools that I was at, we moved to like science on and computer on carts. So if a cart would come by, we lost like the science room, we lost like the art room. Schools are losing gyms, which is also important. When I was a kid, we had to do what they call the president's physical fitness test. And now a lot of schools don't even have a gym. They have another room that has to be collapsed into somewhere where they can work out. So that needs to change. I would definitely focus on putting more money into education in schools so that it can be properly built. And
even though there's mayoral control, you think?
Well, state aid is still above city aid. So there's ways to, I think there should be ways to find a way. I mean, I've done things as a layperson that people would think normally you can't do, right? You have to go through somebody else. And I've done them, so I think as in the assembly, I do more. That's my expectation and plan.
We could do one very quick question and one quick response before Mariama gets a minute to close.
Anyone have a quick question, guys, before closing? Make sure I see everyone. Okay, thank you.
Okay, then you can get 2 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
So in closing, I just think that I am the most experienced and prepared for this job. I believe that I have the most involvement in like every portion of the district. Certainly with the 9/11 health, I've impacted the entire district. And because of the work I do in the schools, I've been involved in all of the districts. So from Little Italy, Chinatown, to the Lower East Side, and Lower East Side, that's where I just came from prior to here, and certainly in Fidei, where I live. I know the people, I've done the work, and I think that I'm the only one in the race that can say that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey.
Whenever you're ready. Hi.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jasmin Sanchez. Oh, they're getting the mic. It's really loud. I was born and raised in this community. I was educated in this community, and I am a lifelong NYCHA resident in this community. When I started my political work in this community, in 2020, when I started to actively be involved in Black Lives Matters, it was with Grand Street Dems. It was the first club I ever joined in the Lower East Side. I was standing shoulder to shoulder with some of you, probably some of you on Zoom also, and also did a lot of work with all of you on the East River Park and everything that's been happening there with the demolition without proper input from our communities. For me, learning how to co-govern across the aisle meant I was a Puerto Rican girl from the project working up the hill on Grand Street, right? With folks that I have never interacted with a day in my life. Being able to move in solidarity with people in this club has taught me how to legislate across racial, economic, and social lines. And for me, that is the type of legislator I want to be, to continue to co-govern in that time. My time is up.
Yeah,
Oh, that's the sound.
You're getting there. It's okay.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Nicole's gonna ask you questions, and I'll give you time.
If you could choose, what committees in the assembly would you like to serve on and why? If elected, what bill would you prioritize introducing? And who in the current assembly do you see as a potential collaborator or co-sponsor?
All in 2 minutes.
Or one or two of your favorites.
Okay. So there are 5 committees that I'm looking into right now. The first one is obviously with Kavanaugh not seeking re-election, we lose a housing chair, right? So I think this district's priority is affordability. So I would want to get onto the housing committee because of my work within the tenant movement spaces, both in public housing and tenant advocacy. The other one would mostly align with the professional work that I currently do, which is youth services and education. And I would want to be part of the education or children and youth services committee as well, because I want to be able, any committee I join, I want to be able to lead on day one, because I've had not only the lived experience, but the professional background to know what needs to get done. In addition to that, it's going to be labor. I'm just going to go through them really quickly. Labor, because we have to make sure that people that are working and, making the city go round and round have all the protections that they have. Obviously, environment, right? A lot of the work that I have learned about environment has been from folks within this club. I was like, boom, right? So for me, that would be really, really important. And then the last one would be codes or judiciary, because there are a lot of folks in this state, but also within this community, who are often overlooked when they're incarcerated or when they're returning back home and trying to get acclimated to their communities. And for me, it's going to be important to eliminate the mandatory maximums. The second look at getting that implemented so that we can actually legislate, and like the judges can have the legislation opportunity or the judgment to say that these laws have changed, these people have earned their time, et cetera, et cetera. So those would be the 5 key ones. And which bill would I be most excited about? There's tons, but I would say the New York Health Act. And I look forward to working with Gustavo Rivera on that, and also amending it so that it's reflective of the needs of all New Yorkers and not just an overall broad state.
All right.
Nice. I got it. Wow. Okay. And I'm sweating up here. I'm be sweating.
You have another question?
Okay, so then just on the Health Act, what is your single strongest case that you make in its favor? And what is the most difficult obstacle, or you can speak to what you would amend it?
Yeah, so I think the single strongest case for the Health Act is obviously that it ensures that everyone, regardless of your status, has the services that they need, right? I think we could all agree on that. Where I think that there is a hiccup is where the amendment will go on. I would obviously be a co-sponsor of this bill, but I would speak with Gustavo Rivera, like I'm doing so now, about this bill, because it is alarming that New York State residents have to pay 100% of the health tax currently just because their employer is out of the state of New York. That is not fair. And the amendment for me for that would be that there is the language that takes away the self-employment part, unless you're truly self-employed, but it is not if you're working for an entity outside of the state, where it says that you're only paying the employee portion and not the overall 100%. So that's one of the things that I would work on that language, but also figuring out a way to do intergovernment where we're actually, and this is something that's happening now with credits, where you can actually apply that to the entity and it doesn't fall on the onus of the employee. I think that was the question that I answered, right? Yeah. 52 seconds. That's another question. Okay, next.
Okay, so same tax the rich is a catchphrase, but not actual legislation. What are 2 specific methods of raising revenue for New York State that you might introduce in Albany?
Yeah, so I just got back from Albany. I saw Sean on the bus today. And taxing the rich, I say it's not a slogan, right? It's what we need to do to get the things that we need funded in our communities. I think we can all agree to that. What we can agree to is that it's going to be difficult to pass. One of the things that I have been able to do, I'm going to use that experience to talk about what I would do differently, is when I helped draft, and everybody knows about this, the Green New Deal for Public Housing with AOC and Bernie Sanders. That is like a robust bill, right? Do we think that we were going to get that bill passed? Absolutely not. But within that bill, there are specific items that we can actually push for separately, right? The repeal of the Fair Cloth Amendment, that was in that. So we got that on the floor, that had passed, that was great. Not the entire bill, but there's bits and pieces. So similar to that bits and pieces, oh my gosh, what was the question again?
Two specific methods of
Tax
raising
the rich.
question.
Yes. So similar to that bill there, where we're picking up like bits and pieces, I would do the same thing with tax the rich. There are specific things that we want to do. Obviously, affordability, right? What we can do is ensure that there are, okay, let me go back, sorry. When we're talking about tax the rich, what we have to do is ensure that people are paying their share. And if the people are not going to pay their fair share, then these corporations need to be taxed on this. And we have the leverage to do that, right? We can say that for housing, if they're going to build, and this has happened on CB3, if they're going to build here, they have to give the community something in return. So if we're talking about fully funding a school, which is what the promise was, ensuring that that's what happens at the Essex Street crossing site, right? But we have to make sure that we're able to say that if they're aligned and they're saying that, you know, there's these tax like loopholes, we go after them to ensure that they're paying those loopholes, because at the end of the day, they shouldn't get tax breaks while our communities are suffering. And I think often that's what we see across the board. Okay. Okay.
All right. Grand Street co-ops are gonna struggle to afford the cost of decarbonization mandated by Local 97. Is there a state level financial support or legislation you would support to ensure these buildings can go green without bankrupting residents?
Yeah, so yes, so I know with the climate act that was passed, I think that we have to ensure that that is being pushed forth. I think we also have to go into not just 97, but also 95 to ensure that the buildings are actually being showcased as if they are meeting the efficiency rates that they have to, and that's through local law 95, right? That one there. A lot of the buildings, a lot of the co-ops, not just Grand Street, they don't have that symbolized, and I will want to follow up on that. I'm not saying that this is a factual thing. I would like to follow up to see if local law 95 will be applicable here, because if the landlord or like the owners and obviously the board obviously here are not adhering to the energy efficiency levels, then we can push them to do that. And I think for me, it's just ensuring that we are fighting for obviously lower utility bills, right? Ensuring that that happens. The solar and energy efficiency in the buildings, I would want to make sure that that's passing through. And that's it.
Do you guys spend any time speaking to how you might help us afford it?
Oh, how am I help you afford that? Well, I think across the board, it would be a co-governance structure. I don't want to be present for these meetings, to be quite honest. I don't know much about, I'm true transparency. I'm a quick learner and I don't know much about some of these bills that are being put forth. And we've only been in the race for 2 weeks, right? So there's some things that I may not know, but I'm happy to learn and get back to the club on that. But I think across the board on affordability is ensuring what the issues are. If it's high cost on utility bills, if it's anything else, that we have to come together and figure out what those look like in practice in Albany so that we can fight for that, right? And at this moment, I can't answer that fully because I'm unaware of what that is, but happy to get back to all of you.
We can do, if you have one more from the cards, you have time for that, and then we can probably do like 1 or 2 quick ones from the audience. Okay.
Okay, being a member of the assembly means representing constituents that have very different opinions in which you may not agree with you. How do you see yourself effectively advocating for the interests of folks with whom you strongly disagree?
That's an excellent question, because it's not just being a member of the assembly, it's being a human, right? So I think for the most part, there's a shared sense of a commonality. There's a common goal in our communities, right? What do we want to see and how do we want to get there? I never legislate, for those of you who know, like I personally hope I'm personally for one thing. I'm not even gonna say what I'm for, right? The constituency here was against it. I had to testify at CB3 against it because I represent a group of people. I don't represent my own special interests, right? So for me, it's the same way that I will legislate. I'm not gonna legislate through a lens of this is how I view things and that's it. I would want to bring everyone into the table and have a conversation about what is the goal, whether that's around climate, whether that's around housing, whether that's around childcare. What is the end goal here and what can we agree to and what can we absolutely not agree to, right? And maybe it's not even about saying no at the moment. I mean, saying no forever. It's just saying no right now to get us to that goal. For me, I think is if you're being honest and transparent and truthful to people, then you'd be able to meet at a common ground. I think many of us in this room can smell BS, right? And can say they are absolutely not going to do what we want them to do. I never see anything from a no lens. I always see something from how can we co-govern and collaborate. And I've done that with many of you across the board, from the east side of the 65th to the west side to the lower east side and East Village, right? It's hard, but at the end of the day, true leadership is being able to sit across from someone that you don't see eye to eye with and saying, we need to do what's best for our communities. And that's how I would operate moving forward. Well, period. But yes, I like the woo, whoever said woo. Yeah.
You can do one question.
One
from the
question.
audience.
Anyone have a question for Jasmin? Someone who hasn't asked a question? You've asked a question. So anyone new that hasn't asked a question? I'll go with Joseph. You had a couple of questions there.
I'm curious if you have a political hero who's represented this community from any time in the past, either during your lifetime or who do you consider yourself to be like similar to you or your political hero?
I mean, well, I can say my first employer, Daniel Squadron. I was his community liaison. I don't know how many of you remember Daniel Squadron.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes, I know, right? Hopefully he's watching, right? But I believed in him so much because of how he came into our communities, right? I had just graduated from Stony Brook and I came back here and the guy was in the streets everywhere, right? For me, it was easy to tell my people in Spanish, tú tienes que votar Squadron, right? The last name sells it anyway, a squadron, right? Like that's it. But for me, he legislated with so much care that even when I am in these spaces, I still think about care. Like, how am I legislating with care? Like, he even anticipated any hiccups moving forward, right? And him and Kavanaugh was the assembly member in the 74th. They would always like strategize, right? And for me, that is great when you can do this on your own, but when you can do it with other people, not necessarily seeking the glory of it, but really prioritizing what's best for the district across the board. So I would have to say that in true Daniel essence, I would probably say him, and I think he'll be surprised by it because of everyone else that I've actually worked for, but in this community, it would be him. He gave me a shot. I think that it was a great opportunity to be the community liaison for here and Brooklyn, because it was a two-borough zone back then. And I would wish to continue in that legacy.
You have just over a minute to close.
Just over a minute. Okay. Well, that was fast. That was hot. Okay. Well, thank you all for staying. I don't want to, keep you longer than I have to, because I know you've been here all day, all evening. But I just want to say I would truly appreciate and I would love and be honored to have the endorsement of Grand Street Dems. It's a club that I organized with at the very beginning of my Lower East Side political career when I didn't find a home in no other club. Sadly, in 2023, not sadly, I know Daisy's watching, I went to manage her campaign and we started Three Bridges, and I transitioned out of, Grand Street Dems and went to Three Bridges. But even in that, we have worked well with Marion and Kenny, and that's the way that I would want to co-govern with Grand Street Dems in that fashion moving forward, and all of the other clubs in this district as well. So I would be honored to have your endorsement. You can count on me. I want to co-govern. Most of you have my telephone number. If not, it's 646-830-8821. You can text or call me at any time for anything that you may need, but I hope to have your support and endorsement.
All right.